you're looking at fish sometimes that could be over a metre long. These things are a metre long, but they're also 2 feet deep. Do you know what I mean? And just the power of saltwater fish then is mental. It's just a different level of power dealing with saltwater fish. Like I'd often say to guests, like, even a 3 or 4 pound bonefish, he'd pull a salmon backwards. Like, the power is it's just mental. Like.
Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. We've all seen the pictures of far-flung fly fishing destinations with anglers holding huge fish and a guide beside them looking just as happy to have seen such a monster fish landed. And I'm sure you've probably thought, now that's a job I wouldn't mind doing. Working, living and fishing in some of the most incredible fly fishing destinations in the world. How could you not love it? But what's it really like? Beyond the Instagram pictures of giant fish and smiling guests, it's also a nomadic life cut off from society for most of the year and certainly not a life for everyone. Matthew Solon is a Clare man who's followed this path, guiding on the Ponoi, in Patagonia, the Seychelles and Iceland, and he joins us on this week's show with some tall tales and insights into the guiding life. And Tom, before we hear from Matthew, I'm just wondering, did the guiding life abroad ever interest you?
Yeah, well, actually, a couple of times I had an offer back in the early 90s from an American guy, Jim Rapine. He's since passed away, but he had got lodged down in Chile, and he approached me after he was over here fishing, and he asked me to join. But and funny, we touched on it there when I asked Matthew, and you'll hear it later when we're talking to him. I wasn't a single man at the time, so just couldn't, because you realize when you're at that, it's very nomadic, and it's not suited to having a partner or having a family or whatever. Like, we'll hear when we talk to Matthew. A couple of times then further on, I had opportunities again. Certain things happened here with me, and nearly did go again, but for some reason I didn't. And I had the opportunity again, and that would have been down to South America, but didn't bother. It's always interested me, but it's a tough enough lifestyle. It's great to chat to Matthew there, but as he says, and it's not the easiest thing in the world.
It's not, and I'm fascinated by it because, like I said, when I was in Greenland last year, I got to meet the guides, and because you're just totally cut off. Like, it's like there's something enticing about it for the first time you do it, I'd say, but to do it year after year. I met one of the guys also in Greenland. He was in his 50s, probably must have been doing it for 20 years. And it's physically demanding.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. And I was thinking of that actually when we were chatting to Matthew, because that ran through, because I was sort of imagining that most of the guys were going to be that bit younger. But then I remember you talking about Greenland.
But then somebody like Lawson, and maybe, I don't know, Matthew, it's admirable to think, why should we all go down the 9 to 5, get a job route? Like,
we say, oh, that's not normal what he's doing. But for him, what we're doing, well, okay, like the 9 to 5 isn't normal.
Exactly.
He's outside, what we perceive to be normal, doesn't necessarily mean it's normal.
Exactly. And there's a lot to be said for it, like, in terms of, and that's what I did ask him about, and I touch on it again when, I was away, is, you're out of the loop of politics, current affairs, the ways of the world, and you realize it doesn't matter a huge amount.
I actually remember you saying that when you came back, and it was almost as if you enjoyed that part as much as anything else.
Yeah. It is. And so to be able to, and that's why I was fascinated when chatting to Matthew, to be able to do that. And that's his life, it's cut off from everything, to a certain extent, and to see the world, like he's Patagonia, Ponoi, Seychelles, some of the places he's been. He's going to Argentina in the winter fishing himself. I think he said he's going to Mexico as well. Like, it's fair play to him.
To me, I asked him about the saltwater of the Seychelles. It was, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a real eye-opener,
you listen to your day there, and he mentioned that, what he thought, the bell ringer, and you'll hear about it later. That's in the bar. Okay, that's great. But, he used to be up early in the morning.
Yeah, your day isn't
over. Get everything ready again. And that's the one thing, and I know from Ben Guide here, he's there for 6 months, and it's 1 week slot, and all those people are on their holidays, right? And they want you to join in the revelry and the fact that they're on holidays. But, he's there for a 6 month period right through. So, you can understand But he's saying, why of all of them, that one is the one he found the most physically draining. Plus the fact as well, and he touches on it, as different to freshwater fishing, how actual it was actually physically demanding and what he had to do in working in boats.
Yeah.
But listen to it, it's absolutely fascinating. Really
it is. And from a Clare man, and he, although in fairness to him, he says it always comes back to once he's back for Mayfly on the Derg, that's all that matters.
Isn't that great, actually? and he touches upon that, about what we have here in Ireland, and let us not forget that.
Yeah, exactly.
What we have here is kind of cool.
Well, listen, let's hear from Matthew now. And I first asked him how he got into the whole guiding business internationally.
Yeah, so I suppose growing up, I was always mad into the fishing. I just got the bug early, probably. I would have grown up in a place called Tulla, which is just east of Ennis in County Clare. And both my parents then, they would have been raised on the shores of Lough Derg. So it was on Lough Derg, basically dry fly fishing in the May that I started. So going to university, I said, okay, I'll try marine science. It was something that would probably, was leading me into an area fishing related, we'll say, or at least that was the plan in my head. And then the last 2 years of university, then we'll say third and fourth year, I got work experience above in Burrishoole in Newport on the Loch Furnace, we'll say. So yeah, I was assistant fisheries manager there for 2 seasons. But when I got up there, initially Pat Hughes, the fisheries manager there, he said, when he realized I was mad into fishing, he said, why don't you do a bit of guiding, or would you be interested in trying a bit of guiding? So I tried that and really, really liked it. Because, yeah, I just, it gives you such an experience to learn about something you're passionate about. Do you know what I mean? And then guiding different guests that would have traveled to these places, we'll say the likes of Ponoi or Argentina or different places like that, sort of put it in my head, maybe I might go guiding internationally.
Okay.
So 08 was the last season I guided in Mayo, we'll say. And I started bombing people with emails. I mean, I must have sent hundreds of emails to British Columbia, all over the place.
And I suppose at that time, Matthew, as well, like the recession had kicked in, the economy had fallen through, It
had. Yeah, to be fair, it was a very difficult, in hindsight, looking back in it, very difficult time to get any type of work. And particularly international guiding, because it's obviously a tourist thing, and people had gone, they were, I suppose, gone tight a bit on traveling. So my first sort of break then was Argentina. As I said, I'd send hundreds of emails all over the world, and I said, rather than emails now, what I'll do is I'll start making phone calls. So I started, and it only took a couple of phone calls actually afterwards, but I got in contact with a fella in Argentina. He'd be the manager of Nervous Waters, is the name of the company. So I got chatting to him anyway. And I'd say the only reason, to be honest, that he gave me the start was his brother was married to a Nina woman. So there was this sort of tiny Irish connection.
That's all you need. You just need the door open a little bit.
And and all I said to him was, oh, Jesus, sure, Nina's only across the lake from where I fish. You know what I mean? And so he gave me the start, we'll say. And I went down to Argentina. I'd done my sort of casting courses and whatever with Robert Gillespie and I had a fair idea what I was doing, but to be honest with you, I'd never actually caught a fish on a double-handed rod. But so anyway, went down there, and that was spring of 2011. So it was good. Argentina was great experience, probably a very good place to start guiding in terms of the beats were relatively small. So I mean, even if you didn't know a beat, if you fished it through in the 4-hour session, you'd be on the hotspot eventually, like. And it
Come
like
here, Matthew. Where was this in Argentina? Was it sea trout in Tierra del
it was
Fuego? Or
sea trout, yeah. It was
yeah,
sea trout on the Rio Grande.
right.
So
Yeah,
it was double-handed spey cast and
very, very windy, I believe.
unbelievably windy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the only thing a lot of people talk about the wind and give out about it down there. But to be honest with you, it always blows downstream. So it was the days that it wasn't windy that the fish would get spooky.
Right.
If you have a 30, 40 kilometer wind blowing across the pool, I mean, the casts don't have to be perfect. They can be splashy, and sure, the sea trout don't know any different. Like
Matthew, how many guys would have been working there?
the lodge I was in, there was 6 guides, so we used to get 12 guests in every. I think changeover day was a Saturday. So yeah, you'd get your guests on a Saturday. You'd guide 2 guests every day, and you'd obviously rotate through the guides. And then the following Saturday, 6 or 12 more new guests, we'll say.
And were you intimidated at all, or did you, like, first time doing this kind of work, new area, new type of fishing?
You would be. I mean, unbelievably intimidated. Just dealing with the public. I mean, probably the first question you get asked driving out in the Jeep every morning is, how many seasons have you guided here? And,
What was your answer? What was your initial answer?
I'm sure when I started, I was green as hell, and sure, I'd always tell them, it's my first season, or it's only my second week, believe it or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sure, like, you're sort of, it's just an awkward question to get asked, like. Like I used to tell first-year guides years after when I'd be guiding, I'd be like, no, I lie to them. Tell them you're guiding 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And,
fake it till you make it, like.
But it was intimidating. But like, you're guiding then with people that unbelievably experienced people. Like there was one particular fella down there, Max Mamayev is his name. He's the main reason I got to Russia after. He would have started guiding, I'd say, when I started senior infants in primary school. So really all you had to do is keep your head down and listen to what they were telling you. And they were very open and honest, the guides. They'd like, okay, fish it here, fish it with that fly. And so it was a massive learning experience. And so you grow confidence then every day you go out.
And what was the fishing like?
The fishing was good, to be fair. I mean, it is the best sea trout river on the planet. Like, I don't think you get anyone to argue with that. Like, if you go down for a week down there, you probably will catch the biggest sea trout you've ever caught. Like, no, listen, you'd get your hard days too, but it is a very good river, to be honest with you. Windy, all right, but as I said, that sort of helps the fishing, to be honest with you.
So yeah, first stint, nice. Matthew, that you were there, that first stint when you went to Argentina, how long was that for?
I would have flown out probably New Year's Day, and it was generally mid-April we used to come home.
Right. Wow. So you were right in at the deep end.
You are. And they did have a habit then of, there was only 6 guides, so you didn't have a day off. So you go 3 months. Okay, changeover day, you didn't guide, but you might have to drive guests to the airport or something like that. So, I mean, that first season, especially the last couple of weeks, I mean, your head is gone, like, mentally, like, very, very hard. But you'd get used to it. And the second season, when it happened, then you know what's happening to you. Do you know what I mean? As in, you can't keep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was fairly full on. Like, so if there was only 6 guides there, like, you were 6 days on the trot.
You are.
And then, as you say, changeover day. I know from chatting to other lads, like, there's a lot to be done. People have this idea that you get to do a lot of fishing. You don't really, do you?
No. Listen, you'll get a bit here and there. There might be a break in guests or something like that, but it very much is guiding. Yeah, and as I said, like, at the end of a season, your head is gone, like, but yeah, you get used to it. You know what's happening.
So that first stint, when you finished at the end of April, what was it, 2000 and was it
11.
2000, 2011? So you finished at the end of April, came back to Ireland. What did you do then, or what happened to you then?
Oh, I was straight out to Loch Derg. Sure, the mayfly was up. Uh,
I like it.
yeah. Well, sure, that's when I got to fish. Like, it wasn't guiding then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I hadn't planned it like that. That's the way it sort of went. It was perfect between the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere seasons. I've been lucky. I've always managed to get back for that mayfly period. And at this stage, I wouldn't change it for the world in terms of that's the main reason I started fly fishing. So, like, I couldn't dream of missing that period of time here in Ireland.
It's funny, actually. I remember talking to a lot of people kind of involved in fly fishing as a career. It's not something you set out with. You know, you go, I'm going to go to college, and then this is my mapped out career in fly fishing, guiding or whatever. Did you find it was just you started it, it was something out of college, you got some work, it was a chance to go fishing around the world? It's something that kind of just evolves over time, really, does it?
It does. To be fair now, when I started it in my own head, I said, I'll do it for 2 or 3 years and then I'll sort of get on the real world, if you know what I mean. You sort of jump on the Ferris wheel. But I was very close to giving it up there at one stage, and my father, he probably knew me better than I know myself at the time, but he said to me, why are you giving it up? Do you still enjoy it? And I couldn't really give him a good reason. So he turned around to me and he says, well, Dad, I don't think you should give it up. And I didn't for a finish, but I was lucky, to be honest, that I didn't give it up.
Does the longer you do it, Matthew, the harder it is to get back to normal society, I wonder, because you're so used to a certain way of life, and there's a certain pull to it, of course, obviously, like, isn't it? That you're used to living this way, so it's harder to go back to normality, for want of a better word.
Yeah, it would be. I find it very difficult to contemplate doing something else. Now I've slackened off, like, for the winters there for the last 5 or 6 years. I'd been going to Seychelles, guiding out there for 6 months. But yeah, I pulled the plug on that now this year. It's just physically and mentally, it's just very, very difficult. Like, freshwater guiding is all well and good, but saltwater guiding is just that level. There's just so much more intensity to it.
In what way do you mean?
Yeah, why so, Matthew?
You just have to be switched on 100% of the time. It's all sight fishing, so it's your responsibility to see the fish or find the fish. So, like, if one sneaks up behind you right beside the boat and the guests see him before you see him, you look like a bit of a tool. I mean, it's your responsibility to point out, okay, he's coming. You see him there 50 yards away. So you're always switched on. Like, even at lunchtime now, if I drop the anchor, we'll say in the Seychelles, and we're going to have a bite to eat, invariably what you do is you have one rod with all the line pulled out and it's left on the front of the boat ready for anything that might pass. So even at lunchtime, you're not really switched off. And
you're
then
on tenterhooks all the time.
The whole time, because he's going to come when you least expect it. Do you know what I mean? Whether it is GT or a permit or anything can happen at any time up there.
Is it a different classic guest that goes to the fishing in the Seychelles versus the ones that would go fishing in Patagonia or Russia or Iceland?
Not particularly. You'd have a fair turnover of guests in all the places that would hop from place to place. There would be a fair few guests now that I would have guided in all the places I've guided. They've been to fish it. Do you know what I mean? And particularly the Seychelles then, because there isn't too much fishing you can do in the wintertime internationally, unless you go Seychelles or Argentina, we'll say. Do you know what I mean? So no, there would be a fair change of. We probably in Seychelles would have got a higher percentage of American guests, all right, because they have Florida and different places than we'll say Bahamas, which is only a short flight from. So they would do a bit more saltwater fly fishing than we'll say guests from the UK or Ireland.
And how did you find it? Because obviously it's so different, the Seychelles, in terms of the climate, the fishing. How did you take to it? Did you find it, enjoyed it yourself? Like,
oh Jesus, yeah. Like,
how could you not?
How could you not? Yeah, how could you not? Only for the seasons were so long, but it's an unbelievable place to go to. And some of the fish, then, I mean, some of like the GTs, I mean, they'll actually frighten you, some of them, when you're fishing for them. Like like you're looking at fish sometimes that could be over a meter long. There could be and they're not like pike. We'll say you get a pike a meter long. These things are a meter long, but they're also 2 feet deep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And just the power of saltwater fish then is mental. Like we used to every Saturday when the guests had come in, or every changeover day, you do a tackle setup, they call it. And you rip all the line off the reel, check that the backing is tight, check that the backing knot is right. Invariably, if it's the GT setup on a 12 weight, you chop the loops off the back, chop the loops off the front, you retie all the loops. It's just a different level of power dealing with saltwater fish. Like I'd often say to guests, like, even a 3 or 4 pound bonefish, he'd pull a salmon backwards. Like the power is just mental. Like the amount of rods and lines we use break. I mean, you'd never consider going out guiding without a spare 12 weight line, at least. Probably 2 spare rods. Yeah, they're made to break things, the power and size of them. Like.
And the first time you went saltwater fishing, what was that changeover like? Saltwater guiding. Let's say your first stint in let's say the Seychelles or wherever it was. Was the changeover, how was it for you to handle?
I mean, also intimidating, but in fairness, what they do, and I had a good bit of guiding done at this stage. Like I'd have probably 7 or 8 years behind me, freshwater. So in terms of dealing with guests, I was quite confident dealing with the guests. And what they do then is they give you a fairly extensive training in period. So what they call, I was shadow guiding. So shadow guiding, you basically go with an experienced guide and he shows you around and you do different moves for whatever the guest might want that particular day. But I think I was training in the Seychelles. They trained me in for probably 6 weeks.
Nice.
So I would have got a very good training in period. Like a training in period in freshwater, we'll say on a salmon river or something like that, you'd probably be good to go after 3 or 4 days. But in saltwater, that's how much training they give you. So you have to remember the big thing about saltwater is it's constantly changing. In terms of you go up in the morning, the tide is dropping and you're going to have a full low at 12 o'clock. So what you've seen at 8 o'clock in the morning could be completely dry at 12. And there's an awful lot more timing involved in it. In terms of, okay, am I going to get over this coral ridge? If I stay on this move for another hour, am I going to be able to get over that coral ridge to get to my next move? Is it going to be too late? Is my boat going to dry out here if I leave it here for 20 more minutes? So yeah, you sort of have to be constantly on the ball, basically.
You mentioned those, and that had nothing to do with even the fishing.
No, I haven't even spoken. Yeah.
And how long was the season, Matthew?
Seychelles season is long. I used to go down for 6 months. I generally go around now, say October time. and then I would come home again mid-April. So yeah, that's 6 months. It's a long season out there.
And how many days a week would you be working?
You'd be working 5, probably 6, probably. You'd have a day off, we'll say, and then changeover day. I don't like calling changeover days a day off because it's not.
No.
Up and you have to load guests' bags for the airport and stuff like that. So yeah, about 5 days a week. Christmas time, you get very busy, and you could probably guide 7 days a week for a couple of weeks.
And would you be out on Christmas Day?
Yeah, I've guided Christmas Day for the last 5 or 6 years. Well, apart from COVID, obviously they weren't open.
Yeah. Mind you, I'm sure it wouldn't really feel like Christmas in the middle of Seychelles on 25th of December.
No, you wouldn't be eating the turkey anyway, to be a bit too honest.
And as well, is that like the days are long as well, aren't they? And I don't mean just the Seychelles. You're up in the morning, you have to be there, the guy, getting ready. And then, like you said, in the evening, then you're checking all the gear as well. Like they're long, long days.
Yeah, it's fairly intense, to be honest with you. From as soon as you wake up in the morning, there's almost always something to be doing. We used to get up 6 o'clock in the morning, go down, get your coolers ready with water, whatever drinks your guests might want. Load your boat with the cooler, load your boat with lunch, load your boat with the fuel. The guests had come then probably around 8 o'clock, and you'd head out. And basically you're going non-stop then until 4 o'clock in the evening, maybe even 5. Straight back then, clean the boat, unload cooler, unload lunch, unload fuel. And then invariably what they do then is they'd have what they call a bell ringer. So if anyone caught a special fish during the day, you'd meet up at the bar in the evening time for bell ringers. That used to finish then probably around 9 o'clock. So you essentially were on the clock from when you woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock in the evening.
Long days, long days. And tell me this, so you were also in the Ponoi, and were you doing this simultaneously, like some, winter time Seychelles and then? Yeah,
that's what I did. So as I said, I started in Argentina, and I met the head guide from Russia in Argentina, Maxim Mamayev. I mentioned him there earlier. He was the head guide in Russia, but I met him in Argentina, and we got on very well. And I said, any chance, Max, that I could get as far as Russia? So he brought me on then. That would have been 2012. So I would have started in the Ponoi 2012, and I would have went north-south between Argentina and Russia for 6 seasons maybe. And then I finished in Argentina, and that's when I went to the Seychelles, we'll say. But Ponoi was great. Ponoi was, an unbelievable salmon experience, basically. The unusual thing about Ponoi, to be honest with you, I don't know what many people know it. The salmon, they're Atlantic salmon, but they behave slightly differently to the salmon we'd have here at home. The salmon at home, they'll run in spring or summer, and they'll spawn that winter and, go back out to sea. But what the salmon in that particular river in Ponoi, it doesn't happen in every Russian river, but it does happen in Ponoi. The fish come in, the biggest run of them come in September, October time. So you can fish September, October, catching fresh sea lice fish, whatever. But those fish don't spawn that winter. What they do is they almost hibernate underneath the ice. And when the ice breaks up, then the following May, the fish are already there. So we'd land out to Russia probably late May. And you're basically going onto a river that's already full of fish. You're not waiting for water. You're not waiting for a run. You're not waiting. They're there ready to eat, basically. And they hold their condition underneath the ice. They hold their condition unbelievably well. If you'd said to a guest, first week in June, that fish ran the river yesterday, they'd probably believe you. That's how silver would be. That's how strong they'd be. So yeah, so they're already there when we get there in May. You get another summer run probably first week in July. The summer run wouldn't be that strong now, but there is a fair percentage of fresh fish in it. And then come late August, September, you have the fresh ones coming in again.
And what size?
It's decent, mainly grills, but you can get them over, like you'd regularly get them over 20 pounds. Now, it wouldn't be as big as you might have heard of the northern rivers, the Rinda, Karlovka, all those places. They'd be far bigger fish, Yokanga as well. But yeah, I'd say the average size in Ponoi would probably be 5 or 6 pounds. But you would get them over 20. You'd get a couple every week, we'll say. Or at least the lodge would, like.
Was it more numbers river then?
Definitely, yeah. Definitely more numbers than size, for sure. Yeah.
And when you were there, Matthew, how many guides were in that operation? And was it similar to the operation in Argentina?
No, that was far bigger. I think there could have been 13, 14 guides at times.
Right.
Yeah. The regular number of guests was 20 guests a week. So 20 guests a week is 10 guides. And you'd need 2 for days off. So that's 12. Then the owner used to come as well on top of those 20 guests. And the owner could bring a group of 5 or 6 people. So yeah, there could have been, at times there could have been even 15 guides in it, we'll say. So yeah, very, very big operation.
And that season ran then from May until October.
October, yeah. We used to close it, or they still do close it. They used to close it probably the 15th of July and reopen again probably the 15th of August. The unusual thing about up there is their summers are actually very, very good, warm. So that period, sort of mid-July to mid-August, the water used to get too warm.
Right.
So it wasn't worth selling. Yeah, and you come back then, as I said, in late August and ready for a fresh run of fish, basically.
What's the story with the Russian rivers now?
So yeah, the war banner in the works, eh?
Yeah.
They're still operational. Obviously, the most of the guests now are Russian, we'll say. But they have started a couple of the rivers, and I know Ponoi this year for sure had a small handful of foreign guests, we'll say. And the way they were managing to do it was they would fly to Kirkenes, which is in northern Norway, and then from Kirkenes they'd get a bus into Murmansk. So they'd cross the Russian border, get the bus into Murmansk, and helicopter out to the camp then. So by all accounts, I was talking to the boys that it went well, and I mean they had no problems getting in or out, basically.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought the border would have been closed, but where there's a will, there's a way.
No, when there's a will, there's a way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And do you miss the Ponoi?
Oh God, yeah, you would. Ponoi was very special, to be honest with you. Like I often say that to guests, like how long more will you do this? And I often say, like, if I quit guiding in Ponoi, I'll quit guiding. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Now, obviously, it was taken out of my hands because of the war and whatever, and was very lucky to get Iceland as a substitute. But yeah, Ponoi was very special. It's a very cool river in terms of the beats were huge on it. I mean, some of the beats could have been 3 or 4 miles long, and you're guiding them then from a jet boat. So you can basically access any part of the river you want. Just start your engine and go. But you could very often be in the wrong place if you didn't know it. So it was very much up to you in terms of how many fish you caught during the day. Which basically what you're doing is just reading water, which used to be fascinating. It was like, okay, it's too fast, it's too slow, it's too shallow, it's too deep. You're constantly constantly just searching, basically. And then the very, very beautiful thing about it was in September time, you'd see the run of fish coming through, and you could sort of see the whole place evolve as the fish filled the system. It wasn't as if you had, your one set beat. You could drive 30 kilometers downriver in a jet boat, and you'd see the fish pushing up through the river. You could be on anchor in the middle of the river fishing for them, and you see them jumping below you, and they're like 300 meters below you. Okay, they're 200 meters below you. Okay, lads, get ready now. Get ready. Yeah. They're going to come through us. And they sort of, both rods just go bang, bang, bang. That's it. Land the fish as fast as you can. And you're like looking downstream. Oh, shit, there isn't too many jumping below us now. But they're jumping upstream of us. Will I pull the anchor? Will I go chase them? Will I do? And invariably, like a lot of the times, you're like, okay, reel them in, lads, reel them in. Pull up the anchor, chase them, try find them upstream. It was, there was a good adrenaline buzz to it for sure.
If you're a fly tyer or want to get into fly tying, then this is for you. Ireland on the Fly have teamed up with Fulling Mill to give away a box of fly tying materials with free shipping to one lucky listener each week.
With more than 1,400 products to choose from, each perfectly packed by hand, their new range of fly tying material warrants closer inspection. Anyone wanting to see them in person and handle them could do well to get along to the Irish Fly Fair in Enniskillen in County Fermanagh, of which Fulling Mill is one of the sponsors.
Held over the weekend of 18th and 19th November, you can not only see these materials being put to masterful use by the likes of Jackie Mahon, but you can stock up from Fulling Mill dealers like Rogers Tackle, who will be laden with new stock.
From dozens of exciting new dubbings, chenilles, yarns and wools, to perfectly prepared and packaged marabou, zonkers, deerbelly and bucktail, the range is going down the storm. This week's top mover is their new Eco Warrior dub. Be sure to check it out.
And to be in with a chance of winning the £50 worth of materials, just answer the following question. Which hotel plays host to this year's Irish Fly Fair? Email your answer to info@irelandonthefly.com and we'll announce the winner on next week's show. And congrats to Wayne Kenny, who is the latest winner.
Plus, the other winners of Davy McPhail's Mayflies and Wilfie Double Triples are Phil Blake and Seamus Neate. Wayne, Phil and Seamus, we will be in touch.
Tell me this, was it, in terms of the guides, were they from all over the world?
Yeah, they used to keep a 50-50 split. So there was 50% Russian guides, and then what we used to call ourselves is 50% Westerners.
Right.
So they could have been from the UK, the US, Argentina. There was a good few Argentinians in it. So yeah, just a good mix, basically.
Actually there, Matthew, was there a law or something or some regulation passed in Argentina a while back that the guides had to be native Argentinians? Was
yeah. Yeah, there is. The only reason, to be honest with you, the only reason that I was able to guide below in Rio Grande was that the fact it's on Tierra del Fuego, so it's sort of, I don't mind to sound bad, but it's sort of nearly outlaw country. It is so isolated that there's no one going to go checking an Irish fella guiding on a river. Do you know what I mean?
It's a bit like West Clare, yeah?
Exactly.
I say that to an East Clare man, like.
Definitely northern Patagonia, all right, you wouldn't get away with it. Yeah. They have to go through courses and get different licenses and stuff like that in order to be able to guide. Right. But yeah, I got away with it below, all right.
And then another thing there, and I noticed you mentioned you were lucky to get Iceland. When the war started in Ukraine, I mean, and you're saying 50% of the guides in Russia were Westerners. That left a lot of guides without summer work, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It did, to be fair. It was just... Yeah, the plug was pulled, basically. One of the guys, an Argentinian fella that was there with me, he actually managed to get as far as Iceland as well. But yeah, they all had to sort of find other alternatives, basically.
Is there a group of guides like you that kind of travel the world?
There would be, yeah. There would be a handful, we'll say.
Yeah, it's like a cult, nearly, like, is it?
It sort of is, yeah. Do
you have like a secret handshake and stuff like?
We wouldn't go that far now, but
But did you find, though, being Irish, having the bit of the kind of, the gift of the gab, that it kind of helped in terms of the job as well? I suppose you can go anywhere in the world and you say you're Irish and somebody will say, oh, Ireland or whatever. Like,
I know it definitely did help. It helped a lot, to be fair. I don't know what it is. Is it the accent or something like that? But I could tell a guest something, if he makes a bad cast or something, I could turn around to him and say, God, that's pure dog shit. In an Irish accent, you'll get away with it. But I don't imagine if you said it in an English accent, or, you know what I mean? That just the guests would feel like you're cracking a joke rather than giving them a bollocking. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I did. It did help an awful lot.
Did you come across any other Irish guides, or were you one of the few that you know of international?
I know I've never guided with another Irish guide, to be honest with you. Now, a lot of the guests, you'd guide a lot of Irish guests, but I haven't come across any international Irish guides, will say.
So what's the plans for you? Now, you're back for a while, Matthew. And do you find it hard, actually, just in terms of, when the season ends and you're between seasons, you kind of have to decompress? Do you kind of find it weird trying to, go about normal day-to-day life while you're in between seasons?
Probably this time of year more so than any other time of year, because there isn't fishing to be done, basically. Like, it's lovely coming home in April time and you just go straight out to Loch Derg and drill as many trout as you can on dry flies. But yeah, this time of year wouldn't be the easiest. But I suppose you're always sort of looking forward to your next sort of adventure then. Like, I'm going back down to Argentina there Thursday week for the winter.
Just fishing?
Just fishing, yeah. So, you'll be getting ready, you'll ordering fly lines, tying flies. So yeah, you'll be on sort of a buzz then as it comes closer. Do you know what I mean?
So you're just going fishing, not guiding now?
No, just fishing this time.
Fantastic. Good man.
Yeah. I can't catch fish when I'm guiding, like.
No.
But that's it.
It's very interesting. I'll say something to you, and I'd say you get it as well. And it was interesting. It was said to me here by another boatman guide here, and he's more old school, Jimmy. And he turned to me once and he said, because, like, as you know, as we were saying, guides don't fish. But he said to me, do you still get that buzz when a client catches a fish? He said to me, and I says, yeah, I do. And he says, I do too, he says. And there's something about it, and that I think that's one of the reasons we probably enjoy guiding, that if you brought somebody over fishing, next thing, everything goes tight on them and they're into a fish, that you get a kind of a buzz as well. And I presume you have to get it if you've been guiding so long.
Oh Jesus, yeah. I mean, if you didn't get that buzz, you wouldn't be guiding, to be honest with you.
No, you wouldn't, would you? No.
No. Yeah, particularly any fish. Just it's a great thing to see a guest's reaction when they do catch that fish. And I don't mean to sound bad or anything, but like if I go out to a river and catch a salmon, okay, listen, I'm delighted, but sometimes it's far better to watch a guest's reaction than, do you know what I mean?
How did you deal with the obnoxious assholes?
You just bite your tongue.
I don't know. Surely, there's none of them in fishing.
No, there's none of them. No.
Especially not in the salmon lodges or any of those expensive places, like.
Yeah, actually, listen, after time you get used to dealing with guests. You can become more confident with them, to be honest with you. But to be fair, for the most part, I mean, guests are lovely, to be honest with you. Of course, you'll come across the few, like, but I mean, that's life. You'll come across them everywhere, not just guys.
But I really get the sense with you, Matthew, like, obviously what started out as kind of see how it goes, and 10 years later you're still guiding, and even in between seasons you're going fishing yourself. Like, fly fishing is just your life, isn't it? And how do you see the kind of next few years going, or do you not kind of think that far ahead?
To be honest with you, I don't actually. I try not to think too far ahead. Just basically, if I have a season in front of me, then I'm okay. So, like, I'll go back to Iceland next year, please God, and I have that season in front of me. So, that's about as far as I have I have laid out in front of me at the moment.
Physically, do you find it tiring, like in terms of the older you get? Like, is it a case of, you can't see yourself being 60 doing it, but look, that's a long way off kind of thing? Like,
Definitely in the Seychelles, yes. That's the main reason I didn't go back down this winter. It was just physically, it was getting too difficult. I found last season when I was down there, you could wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and you'd have to get out of bed and sort of walk around the room just to loosen yourself out. See, the thing about the Seychelles is an awful lot of the guiding involves you poling the boat. So you're standing on a platform just overhead the engine, and you have a carbon fibre pole that's maybe 25, 30 feet long, and you are poling the boat all day long. So you could get up on the poling platform at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're still poling at 4 o'clock in the evening. So your shoulders and your back, they used to be in bits.
So basically, like, I won't say it's a young man's game, but it's you have to be reasonably physically fit, Matthew. You're not going to,
Yeah. Now the salmon guiding, to be honest with you, the salmon guiding or the sea trout guiding, that was an awful lot easier. I mean, you just drive to the edge of the river and show your guests where the fish are most likely going to take, and that's about as physical as it gets, to be honest with you.
So that's an easier part of it. But definitely, I'd have to say, you probably very much it's a single person's game. You wouldn't want to be attached with partner kids at home, would you?
No, they wouldn't put up with it for too long. You would see a lot of the first-year guides there now when they arrive onto a Pleasant. Sometimes the first question I'd ask them is like, well, do you have a girlfriend? Yeah, I have a girlfriend. Yeah, she's good with it. She supports me. That's lovely. But you never see him come back the second year.
Yeah.
Or you'd see him glued to a Wi-Fi hotspot at 11 o'clock at night trying to get shitty coverage to have a 5-minute conversation. It doesn't work.
To be sending the big heart icons in WhatsApp, yeah?
Yeah. And then invariably, then if you do ring her, you've nothing to talk about. Like, oh, I caught 2 fish today, I missed 2 fish. There's just no conversation to be had, like, because you're in the middle of nowhere, just fishing all day.
And I'm fascinated by that, Matthew, because your life is spent in a bubble, so to speak, or off the grid, in the sense of, most of us are caught up in the day-to-day crap of life, when you're reading the news and you're, dealing with all the stresses of commuting or whatever, like, you know what I mean? And then you're kind of cut off from all that. Do you kind of, when you come back, or when you're talking to guests, or when you come back to normal society, do you kind of like look at the rest of us going, Jesus, lads, what are you doing? Like,
It's in certain scenarios you would. When I started coming back first, so I'd be gone for however long, 3 months or 6 months, and you wouldn't hear a news headline for 3 months. And I used to get back and I'd see the parents here, they'd turn on the news religiously at 9 o'clock. And I'm there, lads, why do you have that on? Like, there's nothing good coming out of that. Like, it's not doing anything for you. So that was the biggest thing. It's grand to go away for however long and not listen to one single news headline for 6 months. Like,
it's true, because when I was in Greenland last year, and I was there for 10 days and off the grid, no internet, and I came back and the world kept turning. People's life, I was not, I didn't have to be checking the RT news, like I said, every day religiously to find out what was going. It didn't make a single bit of difference, like, and that's what you kind of realize.
Yeah, whether you know what's happening or you don't know what's happening, it doesn't make a difference. Like,
it's still going to happen.
It's still,
and we're inconsequential to it all. Like. And tell us this, Ashley. So, is Iceland that's your next now? Is that your?
That's so after Argentina, we'd head up to Iceland. It's quite a short salmon season in Iceland. It goes from July to probably the first week in September. So it's quite a short season, probably only about 9 weeks. So yeah, that's the shortest one I've ever done, actually. It is quite handy.
So you just kind of see what happens in the next few years, kind of see where it takes you, kind of, is it? And
Yeah, see where it takes me. As I said, yeah, I don't really plan too far ahead. As long as I'm back in Ireland for the Mayfly, I'd be fairly sorted.
We keep coming back to this Derg and the Mayfly. Fair play to you.
Oh yeah. Oh, well, sure. Listen, that's where it started. Sure,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be only for the Derg. Like.
Well, Matthew, it's been brilliant chatting to you, finding out about the guiding life all over the world. I don't know if people will be jealous, or people will be jealous maybe for a week or two, and then they'd go, "Oh, feck that, give me my home comforts." Like,
Yeah, maybe for a week. Like the one thing I would say to guests is, when I got my dream job, I realised there was no such thing as a dream job. You know what I mean? Wouldn't change it for the world, to be honest.
well, tell us this, right? Of all your years of guiding, all your years of fishing, Ponoi, Seychelles, Patagonia, Iceland, everywhere you've been, Derg, what has been your most memorable fish on the fly?
Probably has to be the first fish I ever caught on the fly, a brown trout in Loch Derg. That's sort of where it all started, so it has to be the most memorable one, basically. I think I was 10 years of age. I didn't even see him take the fly. The father had the engine started and was turning out for another, going back up adrift, we'll say. And just the rod went tight. I was like, it had to be something on it because we were in the middle of the lake. Like, so yeah, that definitely has to be the most memorable one.
And the rest was history, as they say.
Exactly. It all went downhill from there then.
Of all the other places you've been to and everything, it's still the most memorable one is the one on Derg.
Oh, Jesus, yeah, for sure. I mean, fishing at home, I like faraway hills can often be greener, as they say, but to come home and be able to fish in Ireland, and like there's bloody good fishing in Ireland. I wouldn't miss that period of time in Ireland for love nor money. Like, yeah, it's definitely like I've been to all these amazing places, but give me a couple of months in Ireland during the summer, it's hard to beat it. Like,
well, do you know what? It's good to hear that, because sometimes, when you're living here day in, day out, it can be easy to be, like you say, the faraway hills are green, or easier to be just giving out about what's around us. And like you said, it takes it to I suppose, appreciate it, So, Matthew, thanks again for joining us. Tight lines for Argentina, Mexico, Iceland, wherever you end up, whatever you end up doing. We'll have to follow your story no matter what, anyway.
Sound, lads. Listen, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Our thanks to Matthew Solon for joining us on the show. Don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com, as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.